everybody. Welcome. My name is Alex. Welcome to Homemade, sponsored today by American Dairy Association Northeast. So good to see you. It is a beautiful fall day. It is so sunny today. I had to wear my freaking sunglasses to work, which is awesome. But that being said, it's fall, and I am still craving fall flavors today. And I'm so excited here to have my friend Amy in the chat. Hey, Amy, how you doing?
Hi, Chef Alex. I'm so glad to be here today.
Hey,
I
Amy's here.
love fall flavors.
Right? Especially when it involves cheesy goodness. And this is such a fun dish. Veggie gratin with the farmer's market salad. And I don't know if you knew, but coming up on October 12th, it's National Farmers Day. And so it's National Farmers Day, which is kind of like the perfect opportunity to, one, go and thank some farmers if you've got anybody in your community. Maybe you know some folks. Maybe you've got a market where you can actually go and interact with some folks. Perfect chance to show some gratitude. And American Dairy Association Northeast wants to help you celebrate. What better way than going to the market, getting some amazing dairy products, like we're talking about cream, different cheese varieties, but also these awesome veggie varieties that go into gratin. And what's so fun about this recipe, if you've never made gratin, it's so customizable. It's built to minimize leftovers and reduce food waste. Maybe you got some things back in the corners of the fridge that you got to clear out, and you can go and get some fresh veggies as well to supplement it. And so, kind of without further ado, I'll walk you through some of the steps here. And we're going to get going first by chopping up some of these veggies. We've got this beautiful big old leek here. We've got a butternut squash. You could use other squash varieties as well. This is pre-peeled, so if you haven't done that, you're going to be peeling it. You could also buy pre-processed a little bit. I know that that's an option. And then here we've got some of our cauliflower florets. We process these ourselves. Of course, you could get florets too. And we're going to get that into this pan here, which is going to go into the oven. So right now is the perfect opportunity to preheat that oven to 425 degrees. And then we're going to get our cream going, and we're going to just get it to a simmer, so not quite a boil, just before it gets to a boil. And I can go ahead and do that right now as I'm talking. So we're getting this cream that's going to go into the gratin and mix with some herbs and some butter and fat and seasoning, and all that is going to create like a delicious, cheesy, gooey casserole pretty much once we bake this. And so I'm going to go ahead and dump this cream. I've got 2 cups of cream. The richer, the fattier, the better. And so that's when we say, what a better chance than to go to the farmer's market. And when you're looking for that extra high-fat cream, usually you can find higher percentage fat content at the farmer's market, which is why I love getting dairy. And it's also a fun opportunity to maybe learn about some new cheeses, which we will talk about soon. But as I'm getting this heat up, I'm going to go ahead and start processing some of these veggies. I love leeks. Are you a big leek fan, Amy?
I love leeks as well. I think they kind of grew on me over time, but I do really like them.
Definitely. And I like them really as an onion replacement in many senses. You get some of the components of the flavor of an allium, but I really like that kind of like earthiness that you get from a leek especially. And you'll see like a lot of people I think are scared of leeks because you look at it and it looks like it just came straight out of the ground. Sometimes you still get some mud on the outer cracks or on the roots. If you dig in here, I cleaned this one already, but there's often dirt that's stuck in those cracks there. And so you have to really peel back that first layer and get in there. And if you have a vegetable brush, great. And peel back even that second layer to get in there with your fingers. If you have a sprayer, great chance to do that. And a lot of people, they don't use the tops and they toss those. But these are really great in so many dishes, this one included. We could also save it for a stock. We love doing that. We talk about that in so many of our classes here, right? But we're going to go ahead and try to utilize pretty much all of this. I'm just going to cut off the very end here. And again, this was pre-washed here. And I'm going to just cut this into essentially rings. And if you're not familiar with gratin, as you might have guessed, this has some French origins. And gratin comes from the origin is the word scrape. And the reason is because as you kind of get this in the oven and you get into kind of like casserole form, you're then basically have these like oozy, delicious bits on the edge of the pan. And that's when I'll show you at the end. It's better to show sometimes than to explain, but you have these little cheesy bits of the casserole that are sticking to the edge of the pan. And that's something that, like in a lot of dishes, it's kind of sought after, right? The perfect level of like ooziness and crispiness. In my culture from Colombia, we have this rice, and oftentimes people fight over the crispy components of the rice. It's called pegao. And I see that this this cream here is just starting to boil, and I just want to get this off before it's fully at a boil. It was at a simmer, so I'm gonna get this off here, and this is ready to pour onto our veggies once we have them cut. And again, I was talking about just the deliciousness of crispiness and how you can find that in many, many different cuisines and cultures. And so in Colombian cuisine, pegao is the part of the rice that sticks to the bottom of the pan and everyone fights over. And I know that's also something that you can find in Spanish food with paella, socorot. And this is another one of those dishes where you get a lot of those same components of the crispy goodness as well. And so I'm just getting this into this big bowl, and I'm gonna go ahead and melt a little bit of butter. This is 2 tablespoons of butter and a little bit of olive oil. You don't need to be precise with that, but that is, I believe, 2 tablespoons about. And we're gonna get this heat up just enough to melt, and we're gonna get this into the bowl here. And why am I using butter and olive oil? I'm using 2 different fats. We know that butter is obviously delicious, so why not use butter? But we also know that butter can burn easily. And so we want to use something with a little bit of a higher smoke point, and that'll allow all of these other vegetables to continue cooking and without the butter browning too quickly. And we also get different flavor profiles of different fats. So from a butter, we're getting more of like that rich, obviously creamy, but like a little bit of a sweet flavor profile. From olive oils, you can get different flavors depending on the olive oil, but usually you're getting a more like bitter, earthy, aromatic flavor component of the olive oil too. So you're getting higher smoke point, you're also getting different flavor components from using these 2 different fats. And then, but what the awesome thing about this dish is that you're really letting the vegetables do a lot of the talking with letting the flavors of each vegetable shine through. And so much of the flavor comes from using high quality dairy. And we're really not doing a bunch of seasoning besides a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, and then we've got this thyme, which we pre-picked. And so I'm gonna get this into the bowl here with these leeks that are in rings, and I'm gonna mix this with the cauliflower florets. Get that in there, and then what's missing is the squash. And so while I'm waiting on that buttered, whoops, there we go, a phantom blender here ready to make that dressing for us. And while we're talking about it, if you've got something like this, a handheld blender, great way to do it. It's less of a mess than using like the full size. I would totally recommend one of these when you're making small batches of salad dressing if you can. Obviously, if you got a full-size blender, that's great too. An immersion blender in a jar is another good method and another good way to do it. This is just about melted, and I'm gonna get this guy. So if you have a smaller squash or you're using we'll call that the neck, the longer part of the squash, you can cut it into full rings. This is a little bit bigger, and so to kind of stretch it out a little bit into different pieces so we'll have different layers, we'll cut it into smaller pieces. And I'm cutting it pretty thin, so like not more than about a like quarter inch or so. And we'll try to do it as evenly as possible. And the reason is we want it to have kind of like a nice even cook throughout. And then we're going to get this off the heat, not burn the butter. That's crucial. So that's the first thing we're gonna do.
Is it burned or is it just browned?
Yeah, well, we don't want it either, really. A little bit of brown butter would actually probably be nice. I think it could do good things if we were doing that intentionally. So I would be curious to do a side-by-side comparison and see what they would taste like. But we're just getting these into slices to spread throughout the casserole. First, we're gonna mix it with this oil in the bowl there, and then we're going to mix it in with the rest of this pan, get that into the oven. cut some foil that's just bigger than the diameter of the pan. And I'm gonna get this nice and tossed here. I'm really curious to hear in the chat, what would folks put in here to customize it? What veggies, especially as we're thinking about like fall with what's in season? What are some ideas that folks have? Drop them in the chat, let me know. I'm curious. Personally, I love just like experimenting with different kinds of squash, and every year I find out about like 2 or 3 different squash or pumpkin varieties. I found out about one called Blue Hubbard, this big giant monstrous alien looking squash that I've been playing around with. I love playing with kabokas. I might even throw in some mushrooms into this one. What else are people thinking? I want to know.
I'm waiting to see what. Oh, we have some thoughts here. So Steph says carrots and sweet potatoes. I was definitely thinking sweet potatoes would be delicious in there.
Here for it.
Also, when we were talking about thanking our farmers earlier today, Steph was saying that the farmers market in her area was ending, and she baked a bunch of things to take to thank the farmers, which I love that idea of celebrating farmers that way.
I want to know what you baked. That's so cool.
Debbie said Brussels sprouts maybe in there.
Yeah. Fun. Brussels are great because I feel like they're a nice slow roast where they just get so tender. Nobody likes an undercooked Brussels, but if you're really giving it time in the oven, they just get so nice and kind of like juicy, and they soak up all of the seasoning. They're like little flavor sponges in many ways.
Deb says maybe tomatoes, especially cherry tomatoes.
Totally. Yeah, we've got some here. We're going to throw them into the salad, but that's an interesting idea. They could be really good directly in the gratin as well. And then, so we're going to talk also about the cheese, because we're pretty much at that level where, at that point where we're going to get the cheese in there as well. First, we're going to dump this into this. We've got basically like a casserole dish, a baking dish, almost like a mini Dutch oven, right? But if you've got just a traditional baking dish, you just want to make sure that it's big enough to house all of your veggies. And so for this recipe, not all veggies are equally sized, so it kind of depends, right? Like a head of cauliflower can vary quite a bit. Same thing with the leek, they can also vary quite a bit. And so the minimum size is probably going to be about, say, 12 by 6, 12 by 8, maybe even a little bit bigger, depending on how many veggies you got. And so we got all this nice and spread out, and then we're going to, just spread these squash and layer it a little bit here. And then we've also got the garlic, and so we want to make sure that would have been a good point to mix it in that bowl here, but we can totally just get it in here nice and mixed in. We've still got to get it a little bit of seasoning, so we're going to mix this nice and well with some additional salt and pepper here. And so we'll do that right now. We're going to season at different points, but this will be the first point that we season. Get that nice and tossed evenly, and then we'll pour the cream in there directly, and then we'll get the cheese sprinkled on top. And we're just starting to talk about cheese alternatives to Gruyere. I think another great alternative would be like a sharp white cheddar. A Wisconsin cheddar would be really great. But the world is your oyster. This is where it's fun to maybe go to the market and see what varieties of hard cheeses they have locally and experiment a little bit.
Chef Alex, Brandy was saying they grew turnips for the first time. Do you think those would work?
Turnips, absolutely, yeah. I think the thing would be just to make sure that you cut them small enough so that they're maybe not a whole turnip, but maybe like in half or a quarter if you're cutting thin slices of other things that might cook faster because they take a little while to cook. So we're pouring on this cream, 2 cups. You may need just a little bit more. And so what I found is like for this amount of veggies, maybe 2.5 cups or so. You want it to be at least kind of like halfway submerged. And then at this point, this is when we'll get the cheese sprinkled over. This is our Gruyere. What other cheese varieties would people put on? I want to know. Drop it in the chat. This is about a cup, maybe a little bit more liberal because we love cheese in this studio. And we got the good stuff, so why not? Just sprinkle it on as evenly as possible. And then I'm going to get this covered with some foil. We got it to 425. Pop this in the oven. And you're going to want to do that for 15 minutes. And it's important to cover it because if we don't, at this point, all of the cream and all of the liquids are going to evaporate. And we want those to kind of almost like braise or steam some of the veggies that are on the top that are not directly in the liquid. So we got to make sure that we wrap it very tightly. And we will get this in the oven. Do a little cleanup here and get going on our salad. And honestly, I feel like this is the time of the year where we got to take advantage of still being able to make fresh salads without having to get outside of our region for most of us. If we don't live in a place that has year-round harvests, this is the time to take advantage of all those fresh salads. So I'm going to get this into the oven at 425. We'll set a timer for 15 minutes. Wrap this nice and tight.
Couple of cheese suggestions. One is Emmental. And then someone suggests adding Parm to the panko.
Yes.
When we do that part later.
That's a really good idea. Something that's got a little bit more zing to it, either like Parm, Romano is another great idea, something like that. That's a really fun idea. And then you could also, at that point, think of like, okay, what are some other ways that we can customize this dish? So yeah, it's a French dish, gratin, but really the world is our oyster with how we want to customize it if we want to go a little bit more like the fusion route. And if we have spices or ways to season this dish, we could think about even if we want to go like Japanese flavors, and instead of salt, we're using maybe like a little bit of soy sauce and ginger, and we could also then apply those same changes to the dressing. Or you want to go like a Middle Eastern route with the spices and throw in like some baharat. And the herbs also, you could switch it up to travel around the world with this dish. And the other thing I like about it is almost like a one-pot meal, right? Where it's just like throw everything into that baking dish, into that baking pan, get it into the oven. Then all we have is like a bowl to toss our salad. We've got our little handheld blender to make the dressing, and it's that easy. So this is a perfect like lazy meal. It's a Sunday night or it's week. You get home from a long day of work, maybe activities with the kids, and you want something that's going to give you like a little bit of breathing room while it's cooking. You can start cleaning up and have the rest of the meal totally ready. And so you're going to have like really about an hour in total, because it's 15 minutes first with the cook time, and then it's about another at least half an hour of baking with the gratin. And then that's going to give you plenty of time to like literally make the salad, clean the whole kitchen, set the table, and you're just ready to go and eat, hopefully. And so this is another chance to kind of think about like the same way with what ways can you minimize food waste, clear out the back of the fridge. You could do the same thing with the salad. So we had here some cherry tomatoes still on the vine. Here locally, I don't know about folks in other places, we've still got a few tomatoes here and there. As soon as the first big rains come, it's really not the same. The tomatoes start to lose their quality, but we've still got a few, and we can still get them, which is awesome. We got some baby cucumbers, like some Persian cucumber type variety, a bell pepper. So we're gonna toss that in with this lettuce, and we then have an herb variety. And that's where, like, again, the world is your oyster with what you can do with this recipe in terms of customizing this one. And so for this one, we have some green onions, some scallions, some dill, and some parsley. But this is when, see what your neighbor's got. Maybe your neighbor's got a big old rosemary bush or something, or you have been able to grow a few herbs. We always talk about how maybe you can grow some in your windowsill, throw those scallions into a jar with some water. Same thing with some of those other herbs. And we can think about like other things like oregano, thyme, chives, so many different directions you could go with the herbs. And the same thing goes with customizing them to whatever region you want to play with. So we're going to throw those in the immersion, either the immersion or in this case the handheld. In our case, the handheld. And then another chance to play with some really good dairy products here we've got. This is just a little bit of sour cream. That's not something that I feel like most people think to go and like get locally, but if you've ever had some really, really rich sour cream made from a local farm, there's nothing comparable. And so I'm just gonna get that out of there, and then, yeah, we're gonna keep it pushing here with making this dressing. I'm going to just get about 2 tablespoons of this sour cream into this handheld blender. Then if we don't have sour cream, or if you're not a huge sour cream fan, there's other dairy alternatives to get that creamy element. Like you could definitely do yogurt. Yogurt would do it. Just probably not a flavored yogurt. We don't want that.
Maybe buttermilk?
Buttermilk, that's absolutely, yeah. You could even make buttermilk by yourself by adding some acid, letting it culture. That's another route you could take. And I'm just pouring this in. I've got about a cup of the scallions, quarter cup, I believe, of the other herbs. Don't quote me on that one, but then I'm going to season a little bit. We have some salt, some pepper, about a nice liberal pinch. Same thing with the salt. And then here I've got, this is 1 lemon, the zest of 1 lemon, the juice also about 1 lemon, and I believe 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And this is like when you're really gonna start to taste the difference of a really delicious olive oil versus like your conventional store-bought. I know for a lot of us, like we're watching our dollars, and so we're not necessarily going and buying fancy oils, but it makes such a difference because the quality of the oil, if you're getting an olive oil that's coming like from one source versus maybe it's like a producer that is getting it from 6 different sources, they're not necessarily tracking the quality of it, but you also really taste the difference. And so I love that it's been a lot easier to get high quality olive oils at a lot of like the membership club stores and that kind of thing. Definitely recommend doing that. Maybe you have like a cheaper olive oil that you use for cooking, and that's what I do at my house. And then we have like a nicer one that we use for dressings where like you want to taste it a little bit more. And that's a way to still stretch our dollars and also get the goodness of nice high quality oil. And so I'm gonna get that in there and we'll fire it up just for a quick second.
I love how easy making salad dressing is. I think it's one of those things that it's so easy to make at home that you just should make it at home.
Seriously, I feel the same way. Yeah, it's like once you learn how to do it, it's empowering because store-bought dressings, like they're not always so expensive, but you never get the same quality of fresh herbs and something that's made with just like that attention to detail, making it at home. And it takes a little while, I know, to get that finesse where you can feel comfortable with just like throwing a little bit of pinch and a little bit of that, but it's totally worth it. And so we're just gonna get this dialed in, and we're gonna actually just get probably a little bit more olive oil here, just to make sure we have enough liquid in there. And so what happens is a lot of like the liquid will stay at the bottom of the container, and so you gotta kind of give it a good shake. And then I'll just get a little bit more olive oil just to make sure we have enough. And then you can adjust accordingly if you need a little bit more lemon as well. You could get just a little splash to throw in. Again, it's just enough liquid so that we can get this totally processed, and then we're good. And we're gonna do a little dance. As we're doing this, it's gonna take some time, so.
The salad dressing shake.
Exactly. It's hard to talk and blend at the same time, but we can do it. We're almost there. You can see it's pretty much there. It's okay if it's not totally incorporated. We can have some little bits of herbs. That's all good. So let's check it out. And I see a few little herbs in there. So I'm just gonna give it one more shake and then process, and then hopefully we'll be good. And so in my garden, I do a lot of dressings like this where I'm really lucky because I have a pea patch next to my house. And so oftentimes, like the most common ones that I'm throwing into dressings are, I feel like mint and chives, just because it's so versatile. But then I have some Peruvian herbs and some funky ones as well. Those are kind of my go-tos. But you'll see, this is what the dressing is gonna look like once it's mostly incorporated. You still see some little bits of the dill and whatnot, but it's mostly incorporated. And so we have that ready to go. And before I dress this, I'm gonna toss in, we've got our baby cukes, we've got our bell peppers. So I'm gonna toss this into the salad. There we go. It's just a nice way also to give it some color. That was one of like the recipes my grandma always gave me, was like, hey, if you're trying to get a cheat code to getting all the nutritional benefits you need with your food, just eat colorfully. And we're definitely getting that from this meal. All the veggies that are in the gratin, and same thing, like look at the salad. We have orange, the green, it's a bright, vibrant dish. And so I'm just gonna get these tomatoes chopped. I'm just gonna give them a quick rinse, slice them in half. And I want to know what some other people's salad toppings are. What do people like to put in their salads? Because, you know, I've often got my, as I said, cheat codes like with my dressing, but I've got my hits that I go to repeatedly, and I always like listening to what other people at home are doing with their salads, because I always learn something. Any like pickles, nuts, spicy things. What are people putting on? Let's hear it. How about you, Amy?
I love something crunchy, so
Ooh.
I definitely want some maybe take some bread and toast it up, make some croutons, or like Debbie just said, almonds or pecans.
Yep.
So some nuts on there, some sunflower seeds. Love
Yes.
that too. Ooh.
Pepitas for sure.
Pistachios, someone says here. So yeah, some good nut options.
Here for it.
Oh,
Here
pepitas.
for-
Yep. So pumpkin seeds we're talking about.
Pepitas. That's, oh yeah, pumpkin seeds, pepitas. I definitely end up putting those on almost every salad. Slivered almonds, that's another good one. Toasted cashews. Recently, I've started, I love spice. I usually don't eat spicy salads, but I started going into the spicy salad world. I've been doing like an aioli chili crisp sesame dressing. That's been kind of my new thing.
So you make a chili crisp and then add it in with
Yeah.
the rest of the ingredients, or is it a purchased chili crisp that you're including in there?
I've done both, but usually it's a store-bought. There's a couple of really good brands. We have a local chili crisp that I really like. And sometimes I'll make the aioli from scratch, but usually not. Usually we'll have kind of like a quick aioli. And so we've got our dressing here. I'm gonna go ahead and get this.
Couple others. People like adding a little fruit, so blueberries and strawberries in
Yeah.
with there. And then someone also added green olives.
Green olives, nice. I feel like that would be a polarizing one. I'm here for it. I don't think everybody would be, but I'm definitely here for it. So we're gonna go ahead and dress this, and I'm gonna also season this a little bit more. There was a little bit of salt and pepper in that olive oil and lemon mix there, but I'm gonna go ahead and give it another nice little liberal pinch. Salad, and then same thing with the pepper. Go ahead and toss that. And then we're pretty much ready to check our gratin as well. And if you got a bigger bowl, that will help too. But this
You jam-packed
works.
it with veggies
Oh
in
yeah,
there.
we're making it work. We're getting all the nutritional benefits in one tiny little bowl packed. And then we're going to, at this point in just a couple minutes, we will take off the foil and add the breadcrumbs. Again, we could add a little bit of seasoning with the breadcrumbs. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of salt and pep. But you could also add some spices. Maybe you wanna do like a little bit of paprika or some other dried herbs or something like that. Nutmeg is another thing that people often do in different types of dishes that are gratins, like the potato version of this dish often has nutmeg. That's maybe something you could do if you want to switch up the flavor components. And then, yeah, we're just about ready to eat. This is looking nice. I'm going to go ahead and take that out. Check on it.
Ready for some veggie-packed dinner.
Yeah. All right.
We have camps setting up here, Team Olive or not. So far, Team Olive is winning.
Team Olive, I'm here for that. I'm definitely on Team Olive. And so, yeah, you'll see here, this needs quite a bit of cooking time. This is nowhere near done, right? So this needs probably another 40 minutes easily. There's still some liquid down in there, but we want to make sure we keep it covered because we don't want all that liquid to evaporate. And so this is the point where I'm going to put on the slightly seasoned breadcrumbs, just a little pinch. Same thing with the pep. Mix that. The breadcrumbs are optional. If you're gluten-free, there are gluten-free breadcrumbs like this. You can make your own too. We're just going to make sure we try and sprinkle as evenly as possible. And then that's going to help us with just the additional browning. We're going to get a nice layer of additional crisp and crunchiness on the top too. This is what we call golden brown delicious, and that's what we're looking for by adding the breadcrumbs. So I'm going to cover this back up, get it in the oven, and then what I do find is that leaving it uncovered at a certain point, just like basically the last 2 minutes. So look to see when everything is kind of like starting to bubble, if the cheese is starting to get bubbly, the veggies look like they're pretty much cooked all the way through. At that point, if you want to continue getting the breadcrumbs just a little bit brown and the cheese a little bit more bubbly, what you could do is you could throw it on broil just for a second. And so you want to watch it carefully because you know how easily it is to go from totally perfectly brown to totally crispy, burnt, and charred when you're broiling things. But give it about a minute, and I would say probably watch it. And this is the oven telling us it wants to go back in, so that's what we'll do. And set your timer for at least another 30 minutes. In our case, we had quite a bit of veggies in there, and so we would probably do it for 40 minutes. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to let that sit for at least probably a good 10 minutes before you eat it. And because what happens is that basically the gratin is setting. And so if you dive into it right away, it's going to be like a little soupy, and it's going to fall apart. And it's still going to be delicious. You probably get a third-degree burn, so that's one reason not to bite into it right away. But also, you're going to want to let it set just to get kind of like that nice, full, solid bite as well.
Chef, we have a question from James. He's wondering, how long would the dressing last in the fridge if you pre-made that dressing?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it depends on how many herbs you're putting in. So if you want a dressing that's going to last longer, put less herbs. And if you want something like this dressing as it is with the amount of herbs, there are a number of greens, which means that it's not going to take super long for it to go bad. I wouldn't give it more, maybe 5 days to a week max, probably a week. And at that point, it's just hard to tell when greens are starting to go bad once they're in a dressing, unfortunately, until you start to taste them. And by that point, it's already like a little too late. So usually I would say just limit the fresh herbs for dressings that you want to save or minimize them. That's a good question, though. And so we're going to go ahead and check out this swap, and I'm going to show you what ours look like after another 35 minutes for the first test. And so we did in total, for our test, we did about 40 to 45, I would say 45 minutes of total cook time once I threw it in the broiler just for about a minute and a half to get it to brown just a little bit more. So let's see what it looked like. Moment of truth.
Are we strictly looking at a color or appearance when you're telling if it's done?
Yeah, I'll show you. And so this is what we're looking at. Like, we are looking at basically for the cheese to be bubbling. And so when I pulled this out before, the cheese was not totally browned. The cheese was still not even entirely melted. After the first 15, 20 minutes, even half an hour, the cheese was just kind of starting to melt. And so you want the cheese to be bubbling on top. And what you can do is you can dig in with a fork, and you should be able to, like, the thickest thing and what took the longest to cook are the cauliflower. So that's what we want to test in this dish to know if it's done. And we will know that the cauliflower is done. Try and find a nice big juicy piece, like I see this one right here. And I'm just going to stick my fork into it just to know that it's ready. And then we're good to go. And yeah, and then at that point, yeah. Amy, actually, if you wouldn't mind grabbing me a fork, that would be lovely. And then that's the only thing we're missing, and I'm going to dive into this. I'm going to fix myself a little plate. And let's see how we did. But again, we want to do at least 30 minutes. It's hard to really overcook this one too much. If the risk of overcooking it, thanks so much, Amy, appreciate it. So then if we want to not overcook this one, we want to make sure that we still see a little bit of liquid in there. So that's how we know it's not overcooked, is if I grab this pan and I still see like a little bit of liquid when like this now looks dry because it's been sitting and it's set. But when I pulled it out of the oven, there was still just like a tiniest bit of like juice of delicious dairy products that we have in there of all the cream, and now it's set. And so I'm gonna get a little slice here. You could do like triangular slices. I'm just gonna kind of do a square slice for this one. And this is perfect leftover food because I feel like it gets more delicious with time.
That looks so good.
It smells nice too, I'll tell you. The herbiness of the thyme and just the sharpness of the cheese. It smells nice.
All those little crunchy bits.
It's perfect leftover food because, right, like I said, same thing with the lasagna, most casseroles. The next day, it's gonna be better. And then if you have some Crispies, this would be a good chance to throw on the Crispies on top of your salad. I'm just gonna go ahead and eat it like this because I am hungry and curious. Thank you for the fork, friend. Let's see how we did.
I mean, you could use your hands if you wanted to, but
Hey,
it might be a little hot.
No rules. That is comfort food. It's so simple. Like the leeks, the thyme, the cheese, that's what I'm tasting. There's nothing complex about this dish. It was so easy to make, but it's just ultimate comfort food. The layers, every bite feels a little bit different from the next, which is fun. And let's see how it contrasts with this more bright, vibrant salad, herby salad. The herbs really bring to life sort of the richness of the cream. That's fun. Wow. I hope you enjoy this one. I'm definitely going to throw this one into my repertoire for my meal prep. I'm constantly looking for things that are going to help me with kind of my on-the-go lifestyle, cooking as much as I do, of something that I can just take out of the casserole. Even the same casserole, that dish that you're baking in, if you do it right, I don't even need to take it out of this dish potentially to store it. And so I can just take this little by little throughout the week, have some awesome, even start to my day. Like, this is one of those meals that I could probably do for either like breakfast, lunch, or dinner. So that's another fun thing about this one. But really grateful for everyone joining us today. Be sure to support your local farmers at the markets for National Farmers Day. And also check out American Dairy Northeast if you want to see where you can find just amazing local dairy products around you. And you can also find all this class and our on-demand classes on YouTube. Thanks so much for joining, everybody.